So welcome everyone to our second week of Old Testament books of poetry here on Monday night. And so for those of you joining by YouTube, you are welcome along with us. So let's pray together as we start. Holy, loving Father, we come to you and to your throne of grace, giving you thanks for how good you are. We thank you for the love you've expressed to us through Jesus Christ. We thank you that we have a good, clear picture of you through Jesus. So, Father, even as we go back into books of the Bible, in this case, Job right now, we can see some different pictures of you. And we thank you that you have continued to reveal yourself through your people through the ages. And so as we study about the interaction between you and Job, as we have it in the book of Job, help us to continue to filter and understand through the more perfect revelation that we have through Jesus Christ. So, Father, just receive our gratitude. Thank you for what you've done for us through Jesus. Thank you for your written word, always pointing us to the living word. Thank you for your Holy Spirit living in us, leading us and guiding us. And as we begin our study, we say, you are welcome here with us. We need you. We want you to be with us. Open up the eyes of our hearts so that we can see and understand better. We pray for the needs of everybody represented here, needs in the lives of some of these 15 people here with us, needs in their family, in their friends' lives, and people in the workplace. We pray that you will meet those needs through Christ Jesus. And we pray for every one of these that are here and that will listen later by YouTube, that they will be conduits of your grace to people around them. People are thirsty for grace. The world is thirsty for grace. And we pray that every one of these will be conduits of your grace to those around who need it. Let our hearts be warmed and encouraged as we study together tonight. We pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen. So as I prayed there, just saying, and we talked about it last week, that we have a revelation of God as we go through the Old Testament, but let's always understand that we have the fuller, complete revelation of God through Jesus Christ. It's probably the easiest way real quickly for me to make sure. Yeah. Thank you, Aaron, for the note about Chloe. Yes, I just don't want to miss anything here. So I'll leave that on the side for now. Let me share my screen and just real quickly go to, I had Luke 15 up. Let me go to Hebrews 1. I mentioned this last time, but just so that you see it right in front of you. In the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom also he made the universe. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. And it's just this that I want you to be sure and see. Scripture itself telling us Jesus is the only exact representation of God. And so we're getting a partial picture of God. It's still inspired. Don't misunderstand me to say that Job is not inspired scripture. You know, it is inspired. That doesn't mean that God dictated every word. And so we're getting a view of God through those who lived long, long ago, who were even before Christ, of course, couple of thousand years even before Christ. And so they don't have the exact representation of God. John will tell us God is love. Well, that's not always, of course, the picture that we get through some of the Old Testament. So we study the Old Testament, we need it, and we just always realize as we're doing it that we filter everything through the lens of Jesus Christ. Now, I don't want to spend any more time on that. We need to get into it because we have tonight Job 6 through 19, and even a little further if we can, because next week is Labor Day weekend, and we will not meet next Monday night, and so we'll have to make up some chapters. So open up to Job, and last week we got through chapter 5. So we're just going to hit some highlights. If when we get over a little bit further, I may listen to some more of the text, but Job 6, Job replies to Eliphaz, the first one of the three friends, to begin speaking. And we're not even going to try to cover everything that he says. Chapter 6, verse 8, oh, that I might have my request, that God would grant what I hope for, that he would be willing to crush me, to cut me off. Then I would still have this consolation, my joy and unrelenting pain, that I had not denied the words of the Holy One. So Job suffering enough that he said, oh, how I wish that you would just put me out of my misery and let me not, curse you, deny words of the Holy One. So we'll hear pleas like that by Job as we go through. Of course, sometimes he gets more angry and accusing God of being unjust because Job did not deserve this. 24. Now I'm going to get any of you to just unmute and help anyone that would like to read for us, beginning in verse 24, and I'll just stop you. Chapter 6, verse 24, and that'll let some different voices come into this.
Teach me, and I will hold my tongue. Cause me to understand wherein I have erred. How forceful are right words? But what does your arguing prove? Do you intend to rebuke my words and the speeches of a desperate one, which are as wind? Yes, you overwhelmed the fatherless, and you undermined your friend. Now, therefore, be pleased to look at me, for I would never lie to your face. Yield now, let there be no injustice. Yes, concede, my righteousness still stands. Is there injustice on my tongue? Cannot my taste discern the unsavory? All
right, thank you, Karen. And so I'll welcome any of you as we have some sections that let you help read. Gives my voice a break, straining it just through the years in Africa, teaching outside, teaching where it's loud, under raining on a tin roof, and so I can always just take a break. So just keep going. Job still be speaking as we go into chapter 7. Look at 7 verse 7. Remember, O God, that my life is but a bread. My eyes will never see happiness again. Verse 9, as a cloud vanishes and is gone, so he who goes down to the grave does not return. So part of what we'll see, even though later Job will say, will allude to something like resurrection, that even after death, he will see God, but we have a mix. This isn't clear in scripture at this time. We don't have it anywhere as clear as what Jesus gives us about resurrection from the dead. And so to Job, once in the grave, one is completely gone, at least at this point. But certainly verse 10, he's talking about those on earth will know him no more. verse 11, speaking to God here. Therefore, I will not keep silent. I will speak out in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul. He talks about then God troubling him. Verse 14, even then you frighten me with the dreams in his sleep. Verse 13, you could back up verse 13. When I think my bed will comfort me, my couch will ease my complaint. Even then you frighten me with dreams. He's saying, I can't get any relief anywhere, not sleep, not rest. You pursue me. One of you again, Karen, any of you, begin reading in verse 17 to the end.
What is man that you exalt him, that you should set your heart on him, that you should visit him every morning and test him every moment? How long will you not look away from me and let me alone till I swallow my saliva? Have I sinned? What have I done to you, O watcher of men? Why have you set me as your target, so that I am a burden to myself? Why then do you not pardon my transgressions and take away my iniquity? For now I will lie down in the dust, and you will seek me diligently, but I will no longer be.
All right, so, have your ears open and alert. So we're hearing Job's view of God. And of course, he's not the only one that will ever throughout history have had this image of God. Now, we can't spend the time to go over to the New Testament and say, well, we know God's not like this, but this is a good case of study. God worked with his people where they were. And this was with the amount of understanding that they had at the time of God, the revelation they had. This was very much within Job's framework. Now, really, any of us today, a person, and God's big enough to take it, a person could say these kind of things to God today. But the difference is we, on this side of the cross, we have a better understanding of God. And we know that he does not himself afflict people. John again saying God is love. God is, or John 3:16, he so loved that he gave. So we get a more complete, a more perfect view of God as we move on. But this is Job's understanding. Stop taking notice of me. Every time you look at me, I suffer. Why do you single me out? Why do you target me? So, and we do see patience. We always talk about the patience of Job, and it's okay. That's good. We can certainly see some patience in Job, but let's be realistic too, that Job ran out of patience with God through his suffering, and not that I've done a lot better with some intense suffering in our lives. I'm not faulting Job for that, but just notice that no, he's not always so patient in the midst of his suffering with God. You keep going into, now please at any point, if some of you have something you want to share or interject, raise your hand there. I keep it up where I can either, or just unmute and, excuse your way into the conversation, but I'll keep going, but please, let us hear from you if you have something. Bildad, so the issue with like Eliphaz, Bildad, the other, what you could excuse them for is just like Job, they are speaking out of, their understanding of God. So they verbalize some of the commonly held and expressed theologies or understanding of God at that time. And one of them is, well, we know God does not let this happen to the righteous, so Job, you have sinned. And they're wrong in that. God will call them on the carpet later. He says, the three of them have not spoken justly of him. Now, even Job makes these accusations against God, but so In verse 4, your children sinned against him. He gave them over to the penalty. They died because they sinned. So that's basically what Bildad is saying. You look at verse 8, chapter 8, verse 8, ask the former generations and find out what their fathers learned. Verse 20, surely God does not reject a blameless man or strengthen the hands of evildoers. So he said, if you were blameless, Job, you would not be suffering like this. And so they're going to repeat that numerous times over. And Job's going to keep denying that. And he's going to say, no, I am not suffering this because I sin. And in that, he's right. We know that, from what we've seen, what we get to see. Chapter 9, go on to 9. We see some of God's transcendent power in creation. Some of the things that Job will say in chapter 9. Job replies, I know this is true. How can a mortal be righteous before God? Verse 4, his wisdom is profound, his power is vast. Verse 5, he moves mountains without their knowing it. 6, he shakes the earth from its place. Verse 8, he alone stretches out the heavens, treads on the waves of the sea. Some modern day, a physicist and not astrologers, but astronomers, like Hugh Ross is one Christian cosmologist. He'll draw attention to something like chapter 9, verse 8. He alone stretches out the heavens. That how in astronomy that is true, that the heavens continue to expand. And so he sees a lot of this verified. You go on, verse 15, chapter 9, verse 15. Though I were innocent, I could not answer him. I could only plead with my judge for mercy. Verse 17, he would crush me with a storm and multiply my wounds for no reason. So there's Job's partial view, understanding his misperceptions about God, multiplying wounds for no reason. Verse 20, even if I were innocent, my mouth would condemn me. And then you'll notice the Hebrew parallelism where it says the same thing in a different way. The latter part of verse 20, if I were blameless, it would pronounce me guilty, just rephrasing it in another way. Verse 27, if I say I will forget my complaint, I will change my expression and smile, I still dread all of my sufferings. Verse 30, even if I wash myself with soap and my hands with washing soda, you would plunge me into a slime pit so that even my clothes detest me. 32, he's not a man like me that I might answer him. Go on down to verse 30, 34, 33 and 34. So this is significant. If only there were someone to arbitrate between us, to lay his hands upon us both, someone to remove God's rod from me, so that his terror would frighten me no more. Then I would speak up without fear of him. But as it now stands, I cannot. You hear what Job is saying, what he's longing for there. If there was someone to arbitrate between us, well, roughly 2,000 years later, who was that one who came and arbitrated?
Jesus.
Yeah, Brian, of course. Yeah, it's Jesus. Job won't know him. He won't see him. But there is someone who came. But again, be careful, because you could think, well, Jesus came to stand between God's wrath and us humans. But no, I'm gonna challenge that and call us to have a different perspective of God's work. Again, let our go-to verse be John 3:16. And what does it say? God so loved the world that he gave the Son. And he doesn't say, and it's specific, it's intentional. He doesn't say God was so angry at the world that he killed his Son. He so loved that he gave his Son. So Jesus is there, but not to save us from God's wrath. Jesus is there as a demonstration of the great love of God for us as humans. So you open to pause if there's any, reflections. Otherwise, we just keep moving on. Chapter 10. He says in 10:1, I loathe my very life. Therefore, I will give free rein to my complaint and speak out of the bitterness of my soul. I will say to God, don't condemn me. Verse 3, does it please you to oppress me? 4, do you have eyes of flesh? Do you see as a mortal sees? So do we recognize that really that is, we could say, before the incarnation, even though God made us, he does understand. But Job says, are you human? Can you really know and understand our plight, our situation? And so before the incarnation, we could accuse God, saying, you don't know what it's like to be human. Even though really he's God and, he does. But as humans, we could say, you've not walked in our shoes. But look at the incarnation. He silences that, even what Job is saying here. Do you have eyes of flesh? Do you see like we do? And so we see the profound importance of the incarnation in Christ, that yes, and not only did he become flesh, but God lays himself out in cruciform fashion, in cruciform posture, so vulnerable. You could say, of course, probably naked as he was crucified. But, how vulnerable are you when you're laid out on your back and your arms and legs are, they are secure, they are nailed down. There is no more vulnerable of a position. And that is how God identifies with us. You keep going, the latter part of chapter 10, are not my days almost over? Turn away from me so I can have a moment's joy. So to Job, it was God's business was to rob him of any joy, of any peace. So then we have Zophar. We've had Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, and he again mouthed some of the conventional wisdom of the time, talking about Job being foolish. Chapter 11, verse 12. A witless man can no more become wise than a wild donkey's coat can be born a man. So though they had, maybe previously they had been friends and respected Job, as we saw in chapter 1 and 2, they don't pull any punches. Job, you're being foolish, and really you can't teach wisdom to a fool. Now he says in 14, so if you'll put away the sin that's in your hand. So again, Job's suffering because of his sin. chapter 12, Job replies. Would one of you start reading in chapter 12, and then I will just stop you after a few verses.
And Job answered and said, no doubt, but ye are the people, and wisdom should die with you. But I have understand as well as you. I am not inferior to you. Ye who knoweth not such things as thee. I am as one mock of his neighbor, who calleth upon God, and he answered him. The just upright man is laughed to scorn. He that is ready to slip with his feet is as a lamp, despised in the thought of him that is at ease.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you, Brian. We'll pause there. So did you catch it? NIV saying, you hear kind of the sarcasm in Job's voice to his friends. Ooh, doubtless you are the people, and no one's wise but you. It's going to die. Wisdom's going to die with you. You're the only ones, that have wisdom. So, and don't fault him. I don't fault him for that. Giving as good as he gets from his friends. But I have a mind as well as you. I'm not inferior to you. Verse 7, ask the animals and they will teach you. The birds of the air, they will tell you, or speak to the earth and it will teach you. So interesting. Let's don't miss that. He does speak some truth here. We can learn some profound things about God from nature around us. We're short-sighted if we treat nature as something to just be raped and pillaged, as something to just be, plundered and exploited by us as humans. When God in Genesis 1 gives the command to tend it, he doesn't say rape, pillage, exploit, plunder. He says tend it like a gardener tending, his charge. So we are to be caretakers of the earth. The animals will teach us some things. The earth will teach us. Fish of the sea. Of course, he says more there in 12, but we have to keep going. So go to 13. 13:1, my eyes have seen all of this, my ears have heard and understand it. What you know, I also know. I'm not inferior to you. So now this is going to be one of the times, I think we have it here, where Job longs for a day in court with God where he can understand what God has against him. So he repeats this often, and this PowerPoint's already in Dropbox. You have it there. But verse 13, verse 3, I desire to speak to the Almighty and to argue my case with God. So when he finally gets that, of course, he is silenced, but he asked for this numerous times. You, however, talking to his friends, you smear me with lies. You're worthless physicians, all of you. And, some of his, verse 5, if only you would be silent, if only you would shut up, for you, that would be wisdom. He says, you want to be wise? Shut up, be silent. And we noted back in at the end of chapter 2, when they got there, we said they were at their best moment when they were silent for 7 days. And so Job is saying, yeah, just be quiet. Verse 8, 13:8, will you argue the case for God? Do you speak for God? And it's what's going to happen to Job later, verse 11. Would not his splendor terrify you? But then go on down. Going down to verse 15. Though he slay me, yet I will hope in him. I will surely defend my ways to his face. Indeed, this will turn out for my deliverance. So Job is saying, even if he kills, so there you could say, yeah, maybe a glimmer of hope of life after death. We have some glimmers of that in Job as we go through it. But it is a statement of faith. Where we will give Job credit is even with the tremendous suffering he endured, he did keep his faith in God. He does still have that faith. Though he kill me, I will still hope in him. So, yes, there is something. Endurance. Again, patience of Job is not a complete misnomer. We could talk of his endurance, that he endured a lot, and he never cursed God. He accused him of afflicting him without reason, but he doesn't ever curse God. Chapter 14, and look at verse 14. If a man dies, will he live again? All the days of my heart service, I will wait for my renewal to come. So he poses the question, is there any life after death? If a man dies, will he live again? So you go into 15. So we go back to Eliphaz. It's the second, the second round of speeches by Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. So Eliphaz right off in 15:5. Your sin prompts your mouth. He says, everything you're saying is driven by your sin. Verse 12, why has your heart carried you away, and why do your eyes flash? You have no reason to be angry, Job. You're guilty as charged. Look, the proof is in the pudding. Look at everything you suffered. You're guilty of sin. Job in chapter 16. Job replies, I've heard many things like these. Miserable comforters are you all. Will your long-winded speeches never end? He basically says, what is it that keeps you arguing? I just have to smile a bit at his response to them. You're miserable comforters. If you came to comfort, well, newsflash, you're doing a sorry job. Your long-winded speeches. He goes on to say, verse 4, I could also speak like you if you were in my place. I could make fine speeches against you and shake my head at you. But my mouth would encourage you. Comfort from my lips would bring you relief. He says, if the tables were turned, I just wouldn't be doing what you're doing. And we do need to go to school on Job here and learn. Well, throughout the semester, as we study this, we'll probably observe more than once, but be real careful whenever we go to someone who is suffering. They've lost a loved one. Just say it clearly. It is not my job. It is not your job to go and try to tell them why God let this happen. So let's not do that. The truth is, you and I don't know why all of these things happen. So when you go to someone who has lost a loved one, don't put yourself in a position of saying some of the certainly poor theology. Oh, as a friend of ours, when he lost his daughter, oh, God needed another angel. Well, that's terrible theology. It's not even correct. He wouldn't let it happen if he didn't know you could handle it. Makes them angry. I can't handle this. What do you mean? I'm not handling it. So let's don't do that. People that are grieving loss of loved ones, they repeatedly have said what I needed most and what was the most comforting were people who just came and said, we are so sorry. We love you. We are praying for you. And it's that simple. God does not send us to try to tell them why this happened. If they talk, if they ask questions, sure, we can have conversation with them. But maybe also, and if they vent, let them be a listening ear, sympathize. We don't have to try to provide answers. So we get some of that here from Job. Verse 7, chapter 16, verse 7. Surely, O God, you've worn me out. You've devastated my household. 11, you've turned me over to evil men. 12, all was well, but you shattered me. So that was his view, that without reason, God had done all of this to him. So again, we need to have the humility to realize we don't understand. Verse 19, 16, 19. Even now, my witness is in heaven, my advocate is on high, my intercessor is my friend, as my eyes pour out my tears to God on behalf of a man who pleads with God as a man pleads for his friend. So there's that allusion again to a mediator. And of course, that is Jesus. Hebrews tells us, he does intercede for us. And we'll keep going. Well, we needed to cover it anyway. Let's see real quickly. Through 19, but we want to keep going anyway. We'll see it when we get here to 2:19, 17:5. If a man denounces his friends or reward, the eyes of his children will fail. Talking about they will suffer because of their sin. Taunts them in chapter 17, verse 10. Come on, all of you, try again. I will not find a wise man among you. Bildad in 18, there's nothing really to note in Bildad's speech there. 19, Job replies again. So go to 19 and look down at verse 25. Would one of you just okay, well, I'll pause, Ken, but let's read this and then I'll pause at the end of 19. So Kenva, if you would unmute, or one of you just unmute and read 25, 26, 27.
Of 17?
Yeah, no, 19.
19, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 25 through 27.
Okay. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been thus destroyed, yet in my flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see for myself, and my eyes shall behold, and not another. My heart faints within me. If you say, how we will pursue him, and the root of the matter is found in him, be afraid of the sword. For wrath, is that good?
Yes, yeah, thank you. And so before I let you, you can go ahead and stay unmuted. But I'm 25, I know my Redeemer lives. In the end, he will stand on earth. Even when my flesh is destroyed, I will see God. There's one of the stronger statements about life after death. And you can see his faith being revived here. Kendra, go ahead with your,
My question?
yeah.
It was more of a generalized question about the book of Job than any one chapter or verse. But as we're going through and looking at different things he's saying, especially when you mentioned that he said he wishes he had an advocate, I was just wondering your perspective of whether or not now that we do have Jesus in our life, do you think that that Satan has that same power to come before God and to question us or to slander us now that Jesus has lived in our shoes and has washed us when we accept him?
No, that's good question, Kendra. And let me just go real quickly to Revelation 12. As far as we can see, I think this is pretty, this gives us some insight. So we don't know exactly when in history, this occurred. We can't just say at his resurrection, but let's just say in general, with the incarnation of Jesus, between incarnation, crucifixion, resurrection, ascension, let's just say in that broader time frame. God doesn't give us the details. War broke out. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. Dragon was not strong enough, and it lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan. And now every time you see Satan, it is the accuser. You mentioned accusing us, Kendra. So the accuser, he was hurled to the earth, his angels with him. Down here, now have come the salvation, the kingdom of our God, the authority of his Messiah, for the accuser of our brothers and sisters who accuses them before God day and night has been hurled down. They triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. So I go to that. I think that's about as succinctly as I can say that answer. I think that what you're asking is right. It's a good question. And we would have to say, no, it doesn't, because of the death, burial, the life, the incarnation, death, burial, resurrection of Jesus. There was a tremendous shift in the spiritual power, in the realm of spiritual powers. Satan thrown down. He's been hurled down. It doesn't mean he stops. He's not been defeated. He is a wounded beast, but we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Now, he does go on to say in verse 12, therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them, but woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He's filled with fury, because he knows his time is short. And I want to say 17. Then the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to wage war against the rest of her offspring, those who keep God's commands and hold fast to their testimony about Jesus. So it doesn't mean that he's not a threat in our lives. I think it's why Jesus has us pray in the Lord's Prayer, keep us from the power of the evil one. He still wages war against God's people, those who keep God's commands and holds fast to their testimony about Jesus. So I pray even something like this will keep us from buying into a false theology kind of the just different ways you can say it, but whether it's name it, claim it, or that if we have true faith, we will be victorious over everything. Ultimately, we will. They were victorious, but they were still martyred for their faith, and none of that has changed. God in his wisdom and his great plan today, more people are martyred every day. In Nigeria alone, nearly 13 a day. So today in Nigeria alone, we've had 13 brothers and sisters who were martyred. So it's still happening. He still makes war against those who hold fast to their testimony about Jesus. But overall, still the picture is different than what we see with Job. So thank you, Kendra. Good question. Let's go ahead and keep going. We've got some minutes since between tonight and 2 weeks when we come back, we're covering 3 sections. So it helps to go ahead and get through. Right now, we just finished tonight's section, chapter 19. So go on. Sometimes I know I cut off a lot of my head, but I'm leaning close to the microphone because I can tell my voice is getting weak. Chapter 20, Zohar responds again, talking about a guilty person, an evil person. 2020, surely you will have no respite, no rest from this craving. Job replies in 21. Let's see. It's one that's kind of like Psalm 73, and I think we're going to listen to this, to 20. Because, people can still wonder this today, and you see it's almost exactly what's said in Psalm 73. So let me see.
Chapter 18, then chapter 20, then Zophar.
Well, let me see if I can get this. I had the speaker where it was on earlier. If it doesn't come on, we'll just do some of the highlights.
Zophar the Naamathite replied, my troubled thought, chapter 20. Then Zophar the Naamathite replied, my troubled thoughts prompt me to answer, because I am greatly disturbed. I hear a rebuke that disarms me.
21. I'm sorry, I meant to go to 21.
Chapter 21. Then Job replied, listen carefully to my words. Let this be the consolation you give me. Bear with me while I speak, and after I've spoken, mock on. Is my complaint directed to a human being? Why should I not be impatient? Look at me and be appalled. Clap your hand over your mouth. When I think about this, I am terrified. Trembling seizes my body. Why do the wicked live on, growing old and increasing in power? They see their children established around them, their offspring before their eyes. Their homes are safe and free from fear. The rod of God is not on them. Their bulls never fail to breed. Their cows calve and do not miscarry. They send forth their children as a flock. Their little ones dance about. They sing to the music of timbrel and lyre. They make merry to the sound of the pipe. They spend their years in prosperity and go down to the grave in peace. Yet they say to God, leave us alone. We have no desire to know your ways. Who is the Almighty that we should serve him? What would we gain by praying to him? Their prosperity is not in their own hands. So I stand aloof from the plans of the wicked. Yet how often is the lamp of the wicked snuffed out? How often does calamity come upon them, the fate God allots in his anger? How often are they like straw before the wind, like chaff swept away by a gale? It is said, God stores up the punishment of the wicked for their children. Let him repay the wicked so that they themselves will experience it. Let their own eyes see their destruction. Let them drink the cup of the wrath of the Almighty. For what do they care about the families they leave behind when their allotted months come to an end? Can anyone teach knowledge to God, since he judges even the highest? One person.
I'm just gonna go ahead and pause or stop there. We won't listen to the whole thing. But I wanted you to just hear it read. When we get to Psalm 73, it's just like that. And basically it is, God, it seems like to me, you make it easy on the wicked. You could even say, like Job is saying, you bless the wicked and you punish the righteous. Well, that's not a new thought. And some people, even today can voice that, but that is not our God. In Psalm 73, the psalmist resolves it at the end. He basically says, when I spent time in worship, my eyes were open, and I saw that you are a just God. You are fair and righteous. But we don't hear that kind of a resolution with Job right now. But I just wanted you to hear that. 22, Eliphaz in chapter 22 says in verse 5, is not your wickedness great? Are not your sins endless? So there you have that parallelism, saying the same thing a couple of different ways. So no, nothing's changed. They're still lobbing the same grenades at Job. Then you get to Job 23. Let's see. Let's listen to some of it as well, chapter 23.
Chapter 23. Then Job replied, even today my complaint is bitter. His hand is heavy in spite of my groaning. If only I knew where to find him. If only I could go to his dwelling. I would state my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would find out what he would answer me and consider what he would say to me. Would he vigorously oppose me? No, he would not press charges against me. There the upright can establish their innocence before him, and there I would be delivered forever from my judge. But if I go to the east, he is not there. If I go to the west, I do not find him. When he is at work in the north, I do not see him. When he turns to the south, I catch no glimpse of him. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. My feet have closely followed his steps. I have kept to his way without turning aside. I have not departed from the commands of his lips. I have treasured the words of his mouth more than my daily bread. But he stands alone, and who can oppose him? He does whatever he pleases. He carries out his decree against me, and many such plans he still has in store. That is why.
Okay. So again, just keep remembering, this is Job's view of God. I pray that you, as we study through this, that you don't let this seep into your subconscious and you adopt this as your view of God, that basically talking about how God is capricious. He doesn't care about us as humans. He does what he pleases. And if someone righteous like Job suffers, he doesn't really care. And that is not the case. That is not our God. He cared so much that he came to do something about that brokenness. So good to hear it, good to study it. Just be alert yourself that you don't, pick up these views of God as being capricious, unsteady, not fair, not just, because Job certainly accuses him of being unjust. He'll go on in 24 again to kind of talk about why do the wicked prosper. And it's kind of what Jeremiah does in Jeremiah chapter 12. He accuses God basically of the same thing. So it happens more than once in scripture. Again, God basically, you're ignoring the wicked, or even letting the wicked totally off the hook. But Jeremiah suffered a lot too. And he says, you are making me suffer unjustly. Now God responds to Jeremiah in Jeremiah 12 and says, well, basically, paraphrased, son, if you will, leave the foolish talk, I will help you understand. So it's understandable that we go there feeling that way about God, but it is not who God really is. You go on into 25, Bildad makes a short reply. And then Job in chapter 26, all the way through 31. So 26 through 31 is all Job. Let me get. And we have like 5 more minutes. Let's go ahead and just look a little bit. Job 26, he replies, look at verse 26, verse 7. He spreads out the northern skies over empty spaces, suspends the earth over nothing. 10, he marks out the horizons on the face of the waters. My dad often, he loves this. He'll quote it. Dad's 90 now, still pretty sharp. And he just reads a lot too, and has talked about how astronomers have found that this is true. Verse 7, the northern skies, empty space, that as they peer deeply there, of course, yes, they see some stars and all, but there is an emptiness compared to other portions of the universe. But with all of his greatness, and this is what my dad really loves to draw attention to, verse 14, 26:14. And these are but the outer fringe of his works. How faint the whispers we hear of him. Who then can understand the thunder of his power? As magnificent as the universe is, and of course, the Hubble telescope helped us to peer into the universe and see some things now, the new, and I'm sure you've seen it in the news at times, the new James Webb telescope put up by NASA. We saw it while we were still in Houston, went to NASA. One of my fellow elders worked there, and he was working on the James Webb telescope. And so that is giving, scientists unrivaled ability to be able to peer deeply into space and to see, and with all of the galaxies and things they continue to discover, verse 14 is true. These are just the outer fringe of his works. We barely hear a whisper of his greatness with everything that we see. So that's just, I love that. I love that imagery that we have there. I think we'll finish nothing really in 27. Look at 28. 28 verse 12. Where does wisdom Where can wisdom be found? Where does understanding dwell? Man does not comprehend its worth. So it's interesting, and we'll finish with this. Where can wisdom be found? So you can keep your place here, but we're not coming back to Job as we finish tonight. Where can wisdom be found? Turn over to 1 Corinthians chapter 1. First Corinthians chapter 1, verse 30. It is because of him that you are in Christ Jesus, who has become for us wisdom from God. That is our righteousness, holiness, and redemption. But Paul just clearly saying Jesus is he is the wisdom of God. And Job asking where can wisdom be found? Job makes several allusions to what will become fulfilled in Jesus. Job just doesn't get to see that himself. But again, we can commend him for his faith and enduring suffering, had plenty to say to God and had some misunderstandings about God, but his faith endured. He says, when he has tested me, I will come through as pure gold, which Job does. And where is part of the reason that we get to read about his life here. Well, that brings us to a good point, and we will stop there for tonight. And so again, I'll send an email next week because there's some that aren't here tonight, and remind everybody that we don't meet next Monday night. See you in 2 weeks. So we'll say goodbye, and the Lord be with you till we meet again.
Good night, Kirk.
Good night. Good night. Thank you, Kirk.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.